And I did a lot of bad writing. It took me a lot of time to get flexible, but it was, quality was really a function of time put in. And so it was just, and part of being able to put all of that time in is really loving the process. And so getting those personal benefits from it, getting the, you're excited at the little win. So it was a little win for me to get my agent. It was a little win for me to do my first full back bend, and just being excited about those steps along the way. Those, kept me involved for long enough to see real gains. So yeah, to synthesize, I would say do it every day. Love the process and be prepared to put in a lot of time. Like this book took me years to write. And because I wrote my second one full time, that was much shorter.
Sure.
But you just have to spoon your way out of the prison, and it takes a lot of time to spoon a tunnel out. Yeah. So.
Perfect. That's a great analogy. It just reminds me of actually, now I'm just picturing Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, Count of Monte Cristo. You got to spoon your way out every day.
Right. Yeah, just wanted a little. That's awesome. So let's a little bit about, I guess, your book, because I really want listeners to go out there and buy it when it's available and read this humorous story that you've written. When you were actually writing this process, how did you create your character names? How did you keep everything organized? The actual nitty-gritty of the business of writing a book. How did you develop your system?
Interesting. So in terms of organizing the book, I keep a saved copy of every draft. And while I'm writing, I keep open a document where I put everything that I delete. And so that to me takes away my fear of deleting or my fear of revision. And that allows me to take pretty sizable editing leaps. So my agent and editor will, I'm called the revision queen, and that's because I make so many changes in each draft. And I think that it's a very scary thing to take something that someone in this ambiguous world has okayed and then to change it drastically. But I think that what gives me the courage to do that is to keep a log of everywhere it's been so I can always go back to it. So that's one organization thing that I do regularly. In terms of character names, I try to find names that are simultaneously recognizable but a little bit unusual. So the main character, Allegra. So that's not at least in my world, it's not a common girl's name, but you recognize it immediately as a girl's name and it stands out. And the man who sits next to her is named Trip. So again, not a very common man's name, and it stands out, but you recognize it. So those are just a couple of tricks that I have.
Sure. Because of your revisionist process here, how do you know when your book is done? Or when you would say, this is as far as I can go right now, and now it needs to go, I need to send it to an editor?
I read once that David Foster Wallace wrote each of his works out 5 times by hand, and that's how he would know it was done. And so I don't work by hand, but for some reason I've kept on to the number 5. And so I'll go through it 5 times. And, after that point I say, okay, it's done.
Sure.
Just revise. I know someone who's been writing a novel for 5 to 6 years, and you can revise something indefinitely, but you have to have a line in the sand when you just turn it in, and you know that there are things you could work on forever, but perfection is asymptotic. You'll never get there. So you just got to cut yourself off at some point.
Excellent. So with everything that you've done and experienced so far, what would you say that has been the best advice that you have ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is never give up. And I say that because the things in which I've made the most progress in my life are the things that I've put the most time into. And one of the phrases I come back to when I see people, quote, outperforming, end quote, me, writers who are more successful or yogis who have a more inspiring practice, I come back to the phrase, whoever is outperforming you has been doing this for a lot longer and probably started at somewhere similar to where you are. And it just comes back to the fact that for me, time is this magical ingredient. And the more time you put into your craft, the better it will get. And that's not saying it's a straight line up, but you really have to just stick with it. And you'll have regressions, and you'll have plateaus, but over time, the trend line is up. So never give up.
Yeah. So something that's interesting is you've mentioned this a couple different times. It sounds like you are a very patient and dedicated person. Did that come naturally, or is that something you've developed over the years?
Interesting. So I think that that's a very positive way to frame the trait, is that I'm patient. Because you can also use the word stubborn, or you can use the word narrow-minded. But I think it's because I really loved what I was doing. And so I wasn't waiting for some giant payoff, 3 years down the line. I wasn't writing because I thought I would get a book deal, 3 years ahead of time. I did it because I loved it and there were little gains along the way. And like, I practiced yoga because I loved those little skips ahead in my progress. Like, there are rewards that come before you reach the big one. And so I think that I'm patient because I see rewards sooner than you may be acknowledging. So to me, yeah, I was getting better and I was getting closer and I was enjoying the process. I wasn't, waiting in the trench for 3 years for this all to pay off.
So you said you already have your next book deal in place. Are you allowed to talk about that, or is that still too
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's
not financially, but like, right. I'll talk about the book.
So what's the next book you're working on right now that will come out, sometime next year or the year after?
I'm so excited about it. It is a love story, and it's one couple and the love between them that endures after their relationship ends. So it has to do with a connection between a man and a woman that lasts longer than their relationship, and how that continues to affect them when they're apart. And I love stories that take place over a lifetime. I feel like they're very powerful. And I think that this is an unconventional way to look at love. And it actually begins at Yale, where you and I both went. So readers who have any interest in that place or who have been there might find that more meaningful. And then the main character is also interested in the physics of the universe. And so you get that learning in this book as well. And her view of her relationship and of the universe, they overlap toward the end. And it's quite moving for me personally. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I hope that your characters meet at some point in a line at Pepe's, waiting to get in for some fantastic pizza.
Pepe's? That place is so far away from campus.
Sure, I had a car when I was on campus, so maybe that made my trip there a little easier.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Cool. Great. Well, I look forward to reading about that when that comes out, because it sounds like it's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
So if the listeners would like to, first off, buy your book and then follow you and learn more about you, where is the best place they can go for that?
Sure. So I share a lot of my life and my yoga and my events and about the book giveaways on my Instagram, which is Madeleine Henry Yoga. And then the book is available on Amazon, in local bookstores. I encourage you to buy local, but it's also available on Amazon. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I will put all of those in the show notes so people can click right through and buy your book and follow you on Instagram.
Great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madeleine. This was absolutely fantastic.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Advance Your Art podcast. If you like this episode, please go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so that every single time I release a new episode, it will go directly to you without even thinking about it. If you're interested in hearing older episodes, please go to advanceyourart.com, where you can find the catalog of everything I've done so far, as well as contact information and projects I'm working on. Thank you again, and have a great day.